Well, hey there. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show podcast, coming from right here in my quaint little studio, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news, TV and streaming, and all sorts of good stuff. Not just giving you our opinions, but hopefully giving you guys some information and context so you guys can form your own well-informed opinions, whether they're the same or a little bit different than ours. Joining me today, we've got writer, director, producer, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
I am well, John. It's fantastic to be here.
And good to have you guys here. And by the way, Ray and Jonathan are out in the studio there. We're doing the show from my office today. We're doing some internal stuff. So today we're doing the show from my office. But it's good to have you guys here. And here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off by going through a bunch of predetermined topics. Then the last part of the show, we're going to take your live comments and questions. Now, listen, if you got a thought, comment, question, opinion, observation for me to address here at the end of the show, go ahead and use the super chat feature in the live chat, and we will get around to those questions as long as the question you submit is appropriate to be used on our show at the end of the show. All right. Hey, Rob, I was just telling you about this. I'll tell everybody. So I got a really fun weekend coming up this weekend. It's my birthday weekend,
right?
My birthday weekend this weekend. So Anne has decided to plan a really cool thing for us. On Thursday night, I'm going to go see my beloved Toronto Maple Leafs play the Las Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas because I didn't get the chance to see them when they played in LA because I got deathly sick. And then, so that's Thursday night. Friday night, I am going to go see U2 at the new Sphere in Las Vegas. So my all-time favorite band, going to see that. Then on Saturday night, that's Anne's night. Anne wants us to go see Bad Bunny. So we're going to go see Bad Bunny perform in Vegas. And then Sunday, driving back to Los Angeles at early in the morning on Sunday. And then we're going to go see Dune 2, an advanced fan screening on Sunday. So very excited for my weekend. I'm super stoked about it. And hopefully you guys will have a wonderful weekend as well. All right. With all that down, let's jump into it here, shall we? Now, many of you guys might remember a little while ago, news came out that Ryan Reynolds and his two writers on the Deadpool movies had signed up to do a Clue film, which had a lot of people excited for him doing that. Well, we haven't heard anything about it in a while, and now we know why. It looks like it is simply not happening. This comes to us from the folks over at Coming Soon, who wrote the following. They say this: Hasbro is handing off the mystery of making a new Clue movie as it shops the rights to a new adaptation of the murderous board game. With a renewed interest in pushing toys and games as movie IP after Barbie's success, Hasbro putting Clue, aka Cluedo for non-Americans, on the shop floor makes perfect sense given its murder mystery structure. Ryan Reynolds had been attached to an adaptation a few years ago, but appears to have gotten lost in the Disney acquisition of 20th Century Fox. Percy Jackson director, and by the way, Muppet movie director, James Bobbin, had been signed up to direct it. So, unfortunately, it sounds like this Ryan Reynolds iteration of Clue is no more. It's not happening, which is really too bad. Now, I know at first when they announced that they were going to be doing it, a lot of people thought, well, this doesn't seem like a fit. I mean, Ryan Reynolds' style with Clue. But to me, it was a perfect idea because, Clue had come out, I can't remember, 30 years ago or something like that. It was a long time ago, right? And I thought if you're going to do it again, you got to bring a fresh kind of energy to it. And I thought the Deadpool team, I got my Deadpool kick stuff on here.
So
the
cool.
Deadpool team of Ryan Reynolds and his writers could have brought something really irreverent and yet really honoring the original at the same time. And I thought it could have been pretty cool. Now, at the same time, not shocked to hear this because Reynolds has gotten infamously busier and busier and busier and busier. And now that he's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've already talked about a number of other projects he's got going. His other business ventures outside of the film area kind of makes sense, I guess. And I'm glad they're still going to do another one, but I can't, Rob, get excited about the idea of a new one until I know. See, I wasn't excited about the idea of a new Clue movie until they announced the writers of Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds were going to be doing it. So I'm kind of now back to that, not excited. And I don't know that I can get excited until we hear who's going to step up and do it. Anyway, Rob, you hear about this. How are you feeling about, well, how did you feel about Ryan Reynolds and his guys doing it before? How do you feel now that they're not doing it? And what kind of future do you think this thing's got?
I'm going to say something that's almost as controversial when I talk about how I don't like the Goonies. People go bananas. I'm not a fan of the first Clue,
I still can't
John.
believe you don't like the Goonies.
Dude, Goonies are not good enough. That's what I say. But the Clue, the first Clue film, you know, people forget when it came out, it had multiple endings. You could go to different theaters. I went and saw all the different endings, and I liked it, but I didn't love it, you know. And I thought the idea of Ryan Reynolds doing a Clue film would be really good. I mean, it seems like right up his alley. And I was really excited about all the talent that he would have brought in to play the different roles. And, you know, maybe they should combine Clue with the Kenneth Branagh mysteries, you know, and have Hercule Poirot come in and try and solve the case. But I was really looking forward to this, believe it or not. And I'm kind of sad because, look, if nothing else, if Sean Levy directed it, I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine notwithstanding, I mean, the Adam Project, Free Guy, I thought after Free Guy, a Clue movie would be a great project for them to tackle. And I'm sad. I mean, the idea of Clue with Ryan Reynolds and the people that he would bring in and Sean Levy directing, that's a great proposition and a fun time at the movies.
I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly that a Sean Levy doing it with them would have been great, but I was also stoked about Bobbin doing it.
Yeah, I know it's true.
Having just watched the Percy Jackson iteration that he helmed, I love what he did with that Muppet movie that he did with Jason Segel.
You know what? I did too.
Yeah, so I thought that could have been a really nice kind of mix at the same time, but oh well, I guess we're going to get something a little bit different. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? I'm kind of bummed out that Ryan and the guys aren't going to be doing the Clue movie anymore. And now we're just going to have to see who signs up to do it now. However you guys feel about it, jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, with that down, let's go on and talk about this, shall we? Madam Web is a disaster. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't believe that or doesn't agree that it is a complete unmitigated disaster. It made $51 million in its first 5 days worldwide. Okay, not a 3-day opening weekend number, not just domestic numbers, worldwide. It has made $51 million in not a weekend, but in 5 days. Because remember, it opened on Wednesday. So it's a complete unmitigated disaster, no doubt. But it brings up the question, what do they need to do? Because everybody's got their theories about like what they need to do in the Sony kind of verse of their Spider-Man-less films about what they need to do to kind of make this thing work, right? Some people are saying, oh, you got to have it more interconnected. Some people are saying, oh, you've got to run this storyline from the comics and that'll magically just make everything better. And I don't agree with any of that. I don't think there's any like formula that's going to take the state of the Sony Spider-Verse and you just apply a formula or a certain combination of this person and this person or a certain story, because it ain't going to fix it when the ultimate bottom line problem is they're not making great movies. Now, I'm also not, unaware of the fact that despite, the problems they've had, that Sony has had some big wins. Right? And we're not talking about the older Spider-Man. We're not talking about the Amazing Spider-Man or the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. We're not talking about that, but we're talking about recently. Huge, huge, huge wins. Into the Spider-Verse wins the Academy Award. Across the Spider-Verse, huge jump in the box office and very good chance it could win the Academy Award. The 2 Venom films that we've had have made over $1.3 billion at the box office. And I've really enjoyed them. The first one more than the second, but still huge successes, right? But then we get into Morbius and we get into Madam Web, and it's become apparent that when it comes to at least the live action stuff of their Sony Spider-Verse, They have completely lost their way. So, Rob, I want to propose the 3 steps that I think Marvel or Sony needs to undertake to fix their Spider-Man-less Spider-Verse. And those 3 steps, I believe, are this. Number 1, slow down. At one point, Sony had in their Spider-Verse 4 live-action films in various stages of development. They had Madam Web going. They had Kraven the Hunter going. They had a Venom 3 going. And they had, don't forget, El Muerto going. All at the same time. Sony never did that before back in the heyday of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man or the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. They focused on one film at a time. And Sony has no experience whatsoever of trying to juggle this many balls in the air at the same time. Some might say they have some ball juggling experience, but not this kind. All going at the same time. And Rob, one of the things that this means is that you are now diluting your talent pool that's available to you. So if you had a bunch of directors that you were considering working with, and if you were developing and working on one film at a time, you could go out and take your best director that you've got lined up, right? But if you've got 4 in development at the same time, you're now taking the second choice that you wouldn't have picked before, the third choice you wouldn't have picked before, and all the way down to the 4th choice that you wouldn't have picked before. And now you're working with 3 directors that otherwise you wouldn't have worked with because you got 4 films going at the same time. It dilutes your talent base. It's all that kind of stuff. And it's clearly just too much for them to handle at the same time. So the first thing that I would suggest to Sony to fix their Spider-Verse is slow the F down. All right? You're not Marvel. You've never done this. And it took Marvel a decade to build up to the point that they could have 3 or 4 projects on the go at once. And even they're slowing down. Even Marvel, who has experience at doing this, they have now decided that they're going too fast and they need to slow down. You do too. Okay, so step 1 for Sony, slow down. Step 2, give the same care and attention to the live action films that you do to the animated films. What I mean by that is this. When they were making their Spider-Man live action films, or animated films, go and look at the credit list. I'm not talking about the voice talent, although they got some great voice talent. I'm saying go and look at, who they were working with. They went out and partnered with Lord and Miller to make their Spider-Verse that has a track record of success. They brought on some directors. One didn't have any directing experience, but has worked a lot in animation production. And then they had 2 other co-directors with them that had more background experience. They just put care and attention when making their animated Spider-Verse films before they started making the film. They said, these are important. Let's get the right people and put the right people in charge. That is fundamentally, we've seen this happen in the world of Star Wars, Rob. That is fundamentally the most important thing a studio can do, is to start by getting the right people on board who will be the filmmakers and steer this thing. That is the main thing the studio's got to do. And they put that care and attention into their Spider-Verse animated film. They even did it to a degree with their Venom films. They went out and got a proven star in Tom Hardy, and they worked with screenwriters and directors who don't have the Martin Scorsese name, but they have some experience and have had some success. And the result was you've got 2 Venom films. Then they brought on Andy Serkis for the second one, who had been knocking it out of the park with his smaller films that he'd been directing. And you got 2 Venom films that have collectively made $1.3 billion. Rob, the 2 Venom films together have made almost very close to the same amount of money that the 2 Deadpool movies have made. Yeah. Because they put care and attention into putting the right people there to make it go. But then we get to Morbius and we get to Madam Web. And what have we seen? With Morbius, they literally went out and got the two worst writers working in Hollywood today. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm sure they're super nice guys and are super talented in many, many other ways. But the two guys had literally written some of the worst films in Hollywood in the last number of years, with Dracula Untold and The Last Witch Hunter and, on and on and on. They literally went out, they didn't care. They got the two worst writers in Hollywood. That movie fell on its face. And then when they were doing Madam Web, they're like, you know what? Let's go back to those same two guys and do it again. They clearly did not care. With the animated films, with the Venom films, you may have loved or not loved those films, but you can't deny that when you look at them, they clearly put more care into who they put in place in those movies behind the cameras than they did once they got to Morbius and Madam Web. So number one for me that Sony's got to do is they got to slow down. Number two, put the same care and attention into these films that you put into the animated ones, putting the right people in place. The third thing I would suggest that they need to do is stop trying to confuse your Spider-Verse with the MCU. When you look at the animated Spider-Verse films, they don't try to make people think they're in the MCU. They're not obsessed with the MCU. I mean, yes, you've got that. Don't even get me started about that little nerd on Earth, whatever, referring to the Tom Holland thing. And yes, you had, Donald Glover, in the prison. Okay, yes, but none of that was in the marketing. They don't have, what's the best way to put it? They got a tiny dick and they have big dick envy. I mean, I don't know how else to put it with Sony. Stop trying to mimic and be or confuse the audience into thinking that you're the MCU. Well, all you got to do is go back and even just look at the trailers for Morbius. And what did they make sure they threw in there? Look at how much Michael Keaton was in those trailers. You'd almost think Michael Keaton was in an hour of the film. And then they had to make sure they threw in that what are you talking about? The graffiti on the wall with Spider-Man, right? It's like we were so obsessed with trying to trick the audience or make the audience think it's Marvel, or they're so obsessed with Marvel. They're like, the only way we can work is we make them think it's the MCU. No, you don't. You've had success doing other things. And then we get into Madam Web, and I don't care about spoiling Madam Web because it's a piece of garbage. But you've got all these girls dressed up like spider characters we've seen hinted at in other movies. You even, like, there's a scene in the movie, Rob, where these jungle men in Peru are climbing down trees and their outfits all look like they're Spider-Men. Like, they all look like they're Spider-Man in first glance. Your villain is dressed up like a darker, almost a symbiote kind of looking Spider-Man. Stop being so obsessed with being the MCU. You're not the MCU. And when you haven't been obsessed with being the MCU, you've had some success. So, again, my 3 steps for Sony fixing the Spider-Verse has nothing to do with adapt this storyline from the comics. That won't matter if you're making bad movies and making bad decisions and putting the wrong people in place and trying to produce 5 movies at the same time. None of that matters. The only 3 things that matter, I propose, Rob, are number 1, slow down. Number 2, show the same care and attention that you have with a couple of your other films, particularly the Spider-Verse films and maybe in the first Venom. And 3, stop trying to confuse yourselves and your audience. And stop trying to be the MCU and pretending like you're in the MCU. But John, at the post-credit scene, we saw Tom Hardy. Yeah, I get that, but stop trying to do all this nonsense. And Rob, I believe if somehow, some way, Sony can get back to the basics, get one movie going at a time, put the right people in charge of those movies, put a lot of energy and effort into making sure you got the right people running them, and then make them their own movie without trying to be Marvel, I still believe they can make this thing successful because, Rob, when they've done that, they have been successful. Anyway, Rob, when you're looking at the mess that Sony is in right now with this particular thing, with the Spider-Verse stuff, what do you think about my list? What would you suggest to them that they need to do to get this thing turned around?
Well, I think your suggestions are good ones, but I think both in the case of Morbius and the case of Madam Web, those characters are not marquee villains. They're secondary characters at best. And it was an odd choice for me. Venom makes total sense. Venom is a marquee villain. Venom was a fan favorite. Venom always puts a smile on people's face when he turns up. I mean, sure, sometimes they go a little far in the comics, but Venom is something that makes sense to me. We saw him in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, so it's not an unknown quantity. But suddenly injecting a vampire into the Spider-Verse or their Spider-Verse and not letting him, if you're going to bring a vampire is to kill people by definition and drink their blood. It wasn't, they cut out all the blood. They cut out, they toned down what was going on. And at the end of the day, because they couldn't lean into the Spider-Verse elements of it all, you basically have a half-baked vampire movie. And in the world that we live in, vampire movies, we've gotten some really great vampire movies, not the least of which were Blade and Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2. So giving us a half-baked vampire movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was a mistake. And then look, John, we wantonly made fun of Madam Web. I think the problem was, who decided that if you have the entire Spider-Verse at your disposal, that you're going to make a Madam Web movie and then not even lean into the way she was in the comics? So it's not even like you're adapting a Spider-Verse character. You've taken one, and there's that clip of the writer on the red carpet going, well, she doesn't really have a backstory in the comics, so we were free to do whatever we want. And I'm thinking to myself, what? She does have a backstory. You just choose to ignore it. And it was an amalgamation of things, and they weren't leaning into, they didn't even use it as really a jump off point. And now you've got Kraven the Hunter. You've got a great actor. Kraven looks great. I mean, he looks physical, but again, you're sort of straying away from what Kraven was in the comics. And I really am baffled by what they're hoping to accomplish. I mean, Madam Web seriously damaged their IP. I think the Venom movies are safe because people think of them as their own thing. But they really damaged what they were trying to do. And what I don't understand is, when you're working on a cinematic universe, one movie or a couple of movies can derail your entire plan. And between Morbius and Madam Web, how much money was lost?
Well, I mean, to your point, I was saying this on the show the other day. Like, I have been, some would suggest, naively optimistic about Kraven, right? Madam
Me
Web
too.
has kind of killed my maybe that's not fair, but it's true. Madam Web has killed it. And I was saying this the other day too, Rob. It just proves, when everybody was crying what David Zaslav did by killing Batgirl, it proves he was 100% right, because Sony should have just never released this film, because then maybe Kraven might have still stood a chance, because it doesn't now, because even I've lost my enthusiasm for Kraven.
I mean, the thing is, everybody involved with Madam Web, their career has been damaged. S.J. Clarkson, who by all accounts has worked on, as a director, many great television shows. She probably will never direct a feature film again, unless it's something that's a low budget indie film that she could maybe raise the financing for. But this, whether it's Dakota Johnson, who I like very much, everybody involved with this movie, and Sony especially, has been sort of irrevocably damaged, because as they say in Hollywood, you're only as good as your last film. But I just don't understand why somebody thought this movie was a good idea in the first place. That's what baffles me. Of all the things they could do, and we even talked about it, that it could have been a fascinating film. When we heard what the basic premise was going to kind of be, it had a little bit of a Terminator flavor to it. I thought this could be kind of good. Yeah.
And I just kind of willfully ignored the fact that they had the Morbius writers back for it. It was just being optimistic, but that didn't work out clearly.
But again, why, having worked in this business and seen how hard it is to get scripts greenlit and made, I really don't understand how anyone, whatever form the script was in, how did they greenlight this film now that we're over 15 years into the MCU and the DCU and independent graphic novel adaptations on the big screen? Why did they feel that this script was the one that they needed to move forward on? That this was the story that we're going to spend our money on? I'm baffled by it.
No, and that's
Tom Rothman ran Fox during the whole X-Men era with Elektra, and you'd think he would know better.
Yeah, that's the thing that kills me. Like, because there's several points of failure here, Rob. And I don't want to make this an entire dissertation about the failure of Madam Web. We're trying to talk about how do they improve it. But again, at several stages, they had to have the script and have a group of executives go, yes, this script is great. And then as they were doing dailies, they had to go, yes, this is working out fine. And then even once the director submitted the cut, there had to be Sony execs going, yes, let's release this. I mean, so there were several stages of failure. And we're not even talking about the filmmakers yet. We're talking about just on the executive level. And that's why I think if they can do these things, maybe they can turn this around. They've already shown, Rob, they can make great stuff. We've seen some fabulous stuff, but they can't do the fabulous stuff and then turn out crap like this, because if they continue to turn out crap like this, none of us are going to go see the great stuff because we're not going to believe in it.
I know.
Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think are the key things that Sony needs to do to get this thing turned around? It's not about, well, get this actor. If you're just making bad movies, that won't count. Don't go, well, just do this storyline. Irrelevant. If they're going to make it badly, it doesn't matter what storyline you pick. So what things do you think they need to do to turn things around? Jump down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, heading into the Academy Awards, the last kind of big one, I think we still have SAG coming, but the last big awards presentations, big significant major awards body to present was Bafta, and the British version of the Oscars, if you will. And they have now had their ceremony and the big winners have been announced. And it was a big night, Rob, for Oppenheimer. As Oppenheimer took home Best Picture, Best Director, Best Lead Actor, Best Supporting Actor. They didn't get Best Adapted Screenplay. We'll talk about that. So let's go over and take a look at the results from Bafta, shall we? Now, already said Oppenheimer won Best Picture. So good on them for winning Best Picture. In Best Director, of course, we had Andrew Hay, Justine Treat, Alexander Payne, Bradley Cooper, but Christopher Nolan wins the Bafta for Best Director for Oppenheimer. In Original Screenplay, Anatomy of a Fall took home Best Original Screenplay. I kind of thought David Hemmingson was going to win it for The Holdovers, to be honest with you, maybe even Past Lives, but it actually went to Anatomy of a Fall, so it wins Best Original Screenplay. Under Adapted Screenplay, the one big one where Oppenheimer didn't win, it ended up going to, and we talked about this, Rob, American Fiction. Ended up taking Best Adapted Screenplay. Of course, Poor Things was another one that some people thought had a chance to upset Oppenheimer. Zone of Interest was also one that some people thought could upset Oppenheimer, but American Fiction, and I'm thrilled for it because this movie is spectacular. I love it. Wins for Best Adapted Screenplay over Poor Things and Oppenheimer and things like that. No surprise here. Leading actress, a wonderful lineup of nominees, including Margot Robbie, Carey Mulligan, but Emma Stone wins for Poor Things, which is really setting up, I think the Academy Awards are really just now an inauguration for Emma Stone. I think it is now absolutely 100% going to be her award to win. She is fabulous in it. She is every bit as good, if not even better, in this movie that she was in La La Land when she won Best Actress before. So good on her. Best Leading Actor. I thought, listen, this is a 2-horse race between Paul Giamatti and Cillian Murphy. We've seen Paul Giamatti take one or two of the other awards. At the BAFTAs, Cillian Murphy takes Best Actor. So it's really setting up a nice showdown now because we've had Cillian Murphy win a couple of them. We had Paul Giamatti win a couple of them. And now we're going into the Academy Awards and we really don't have a definitive winner who's going to win this at the Oscars. So Cillian Murphy takes that. Best Supporting Actress went to, no big surprise, Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdover. She's kind of been sweeping up in this category. Best Supporting Actor, another inauguration. Robert Downey Jr. has kind of been sweeping it up across the board. So Robert Downey Jr. wins Best Supporting Actor as well for the BAFTAs. Still some people whispering, Rob, that they believe Ryan Gosling still actually has a shot at this, but with kind of, Robert Downey Jr. running the table here, leading into the Oscars, I think it's going to be his very, very long awaited Academy Award. Ever since he was first nominated for, Chaplin?
Yeah.
All the way back in whatever year that was, but he might finally be walking with his trophy. Anyway, Rob, which ones to you here made sense? Which ones surprised you? And how do you think this sets things up going into the Oscars?
Well, there were really no surprises to me at all here. I mean, I really liked seeing American Fiction win that award because I quite enjoyed that movie. And I think I've always thought, and Zone of Interest getting some love too. I've always thought the BAFTAs are kind of the more erudite version of the Oscars in a way. And so nothing here really surprised me. Poor Things made a pretty good showing, more so than I would have thought in various categories. But nothing surprised me. And I watched clips. I really liked Nolan's speech about winning, and really heartfelt. And I thought he'd won a BAFTA for, I don't know, Inception or Dunkirk, especially. He never won one. And so it was not surprising to me. And I think, John, I think that Cillian Murphy's probably got the Oscar wrapped up for Best Actor. Oppenheimer's going to win Best Picture and Best Director.
Yeah, I think the picture's become, as we've gone through award season, the picture has gotten more and more, has been coming into focus, right? Oppenheimer is clearly going to win Best Picture. Christopher Nolan is clearly going to win Best Director.
And by the way, both well-deserved.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank your lucky stars that Dune 2 moved out of that year into 2024, because it really did clear the way. Not that Dune 2, we haven't seen it. Not that Dune 2 would have automatically won, but it made the path to victory a little easier for Oppenheimer.
Right.
Emma Stone, it's clear she's going to win Best. Divine Joy Randolph, it's clear she's going to win Best Supporting Actress. The screenplay ones are still in play, though. And I think Best Lead Actor is still in play because, like I said, it's kind of been a split thing between Cillian Murphy and Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti's taken several of the big major ones. Cillian Murphy now taking the most recent major one as well. But you're still thinking it's going to be Cillian Murphy going in there into the thing.
I really do. I mean, look, that guy's like on screen almost every moment of that movie. And some people say that he delivered kind of this otherworldly monotone performance. And I'm like, yeah. And it was consistent throughout everything there. I couldn't take my eyes off him or his performance. And while, Giamatti was great. But
he was absolutely fabulous in it. Yeah.
I mean, and I'm a huge Paul Giamatti fan. But I think that what he was doing was more, I don't know. I just think what Giamatti had to do to keep that his performance that kind of buttoned up, I wouldn't say it's harder, but the fact that he was able to do it and convince us, like I never thought I wasn't looking at Robert Oppenheimer. I really didn't. And I'm like, wow, man, that guy. But Giamatti is this ultimately, what an endearing, heartfelt. He you know what he reminded me of? And it's different performance, but Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society.
That's actually a nice comparison. I like that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you love this guy, and by the end of the movie, you're so with him because you believe him. But it's a different kind of a feel. So I think Cillian Murphy is going to get it, or Cillian Murphy, is it Cillian?
Cillian.
I think he's going to get it. But if Giamatti won, he's a favorite. Everybody loves Paul Giamatti. It wouldn't surprise me.
And he's spectacular in the holdovers. But I'm still going to say this, and I know a bunch of people think I'm crazy, but I am telling you, when I'm in Vegas this weekend, if there is a sports book that is laying odds on the Oscars, and somebody's willing to give me 100-1 on Jeffrey Wright, I'm putting $100 on Jeffrey Wright. If you're willing to give me 100-1 odds, I'm just saying, I'm not saying Jeffrey Wright's going to win, okay? What I am saying is, you give me good enough odds, Jeffrey Wright is so good in American Fiction, like crazy good, that I would not, like, we're saying it's a 2-horse race, and it is. It's Cillian Murphy and it's Paul Giamatti. But if there was a underdog here that could come out of nowhere, like, an RKO, I think Jeffrey Wright is the guy. And again, if you give me 100-1 odds, I'm putting that money on Jeffrey Wright, even though I know it's going to be either Paul Giamatti or Cillian Murphy, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What did you think about the results of the BAFTAs? I mean, a couple of little surprises, a lot of them kind of just putting more into focus what it looks like are going to be the results of the Academy Award. How did you feel about them? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, with that down, listen, we still got to talk about a couple things here. Reacher's Alan Ritchson is saying he wants to be James Gunn's Batman. And there are reports and rumors going around that Henry Cavill, maybe answering what a lot of fans have been asking for, has signed on with the Marvel Cinematic Universe to play an unknown character. Not an unknown character, but a character that we don't know who it is yet at this point. Is there validity to it? We're going to talk about that and a few things more. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second and thank one of the sponsors of the John Campea Show podcast, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. On average, it takes about 30 days for a person to break their New Year's resolution. So if saving money was on your 2024 list, your odds aren't looking that great. Luckily, I have a 100% guaranteed way to save you money this year. Just switch to Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for $15 a month. I've told you guys many times that after switching to Mint Mobile, I am spending less than a third on my cell bill than I used to with a major carrier. Say goodbye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. All Mint plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And don't worry about having to change phones or numbers. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. So guys, to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bills to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? One of the biggest smash hits for Amazon, particularly its season 2, has been Reacher. And its star, Alan Ritchson, yes, Aquaman from Smallville, has become like a big, well-known star. He's got a movie coming up with Henry Cavill, by the way, with the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare coming out, and he looked great in the trailer there too. Anyway, at the same time that that's going on, James Gunn has now taken over the DC Cinematic Universe, and we got a new Batman coming. And some people speculate, you know who would be a pretty good Batman is Alan Ritchson. Well, Alan Ritchson is now putting people on notice that he wants to be Batman. He would love to be in James Gunn's Batman universe when he said the following. This comes from the folks over at comicbook.com. When Alan said this, "As huge as this rumor mill is," he was asked about it, "I feel like at this part it should be offered on a silver platter." Of course, he was joking. Ritchson joked, "I would love to play Batman, but I'm not yet Batman." So put down any rumors that he's already been cast, but I'm not yet Batman. I don't know what Gunn's approach is going to be, but yeah, that'd be great. What? He's one of the most iconic characters of all time. So we've got Alan Ritchson here saying, I would love to be Batman. I would love to be in this James Gunn universe and be Batman. Okay. The question now becomes, would he be a good fit for, say, James Gunn's new universe, right? Because that's ultimately going to be the big thing. Is he the right fit? Now, obviously, Alan's got the Batman look. He's got the chiseled features, right? He's got kind of everything going for him. He's got the huge muscles. I mean, if you had to design a template for what Batman might look like, it might be Alan. He might be the guy. The one thing, well, there's two question marks though. Number one, does Alan come across as a guy who's old enough to have like a 12-year-old son? Because remember, we're going to have Damian in this, who I'm thinking they're going to make 10, 11, 12 years old, maybe even go a little bit older at 13. Is Alan going to be able to carry the look that he's old enough to have a son that old? But Rob, to me, the bigger question is this. While I have liked Alan in Reacher very much. I haven't seen him enough. I wish I could go and watch the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare today to see him play a different character. Has he developed himself enough at this point that he literally could carry a motion picture? He's done well with Reacher, 100%. I wish I've seen more of him. And to me, and I'm not saying he doesn't, I'm saying that's the question mark. Does he have that right now? And then, of course, does he fit the role well? But listen, I'll tell you what, Rob, there's a number of names that they could announce in the press tomorrow that I would be thrilled to hear as the new Batman. And I think Alan is one. I don't think he's the guy, but he would definitely be one of those names that I think would get a lot of people excited for it. What do you think about what Alan said about this?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of his, but like you said, as Batman with his size, his sheer size, look, Christian Bale was in great shape playing Batman. Ben Affleck was more beefy and bigger, which I always thought Batman was. Alan Ritchson physically is Batman. The question that I would have about his casting is, can he be Bruce Wayne? Because like his stern Jack Reacher character works really well for him, but Bruce Wayne also has to be charming.
100%.
You have to believe him as a playboy, that he walks in and lights up the room. It was really interesting that Christian Bale kind of played him like when he shows up with two models and they get into the fountain or whatever, that water at that hotel, or I bought the hotel, that kind of thing. I don't know if Alan Ritchson can do that. He can be Batman, and I would love to see a Batman with his physicality, because he's big enough to believe that in a fight, no one can take him.
Yep.
That's
what makes Reacher work so well. Like you never have any doubt in your mind that he would kick the living crap out of all these guys, and he could bring that to Batman.
100%. And that's what I think we need to see with Batman. I mean, I think that's the next place to take. Look, one of my favorite things in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, I don't think anybody will argue with me, is when Batman goes into that warehouse, flies out of the Batwing, and just devastates those dudes. I mean, that was, I think, my favorite experience of Batman on the big screen, watching what Bruce Wayne is capable of as Batman, as a combatant. And because, he's not a guy fighting megalomaniacs like James Bond does. He's a guy he's basically a street level fighter. And to see that, Ritchson can do it. So, but here's the thing. A great director can probably elicit a performance like that from him. And I'm certain he would take it seriously enough that he would make sure that he could do a great job. So and he's riding the crest of Reacher. It's a perfect time to cast him as Batman. And he'd come cheaper than a name actor.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at this point, he would, a little more expensive maybe than he would have been before Reacher Season 2 came out.
Sure.
But definitely cheaper than, and I'm glad you brought that up, the whole thing about we can't just think of him as Batman. He's also got to be Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really, really liked Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne. It was a very different Bruce Wayne from Christian Bale's, who also had a great one. Oh, I'm pretty sure they'll let me do it. I just bought the hotel.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so I've really liked their Bruce Wayne. So can he pull off the more lighthearted, loose, playboy Bruce Wayne? I'm not saying he can't. I'm definitely not saying he can't. I'm just saying I haven't seen him play that yet, or that sort of, I haven't seen him have the opportunity to exhibit that kind of range. So I just don't know if he has it or not. And I'm very, very curious to find out. Do you think that him going public like this will have any sway over somebody like James Gunn or Peter Safran now that they're trying to kind of figure out who their Batman's going to be?
I don't know about that, because I think when actors do this kind of thing or make these comments publicly, it can go one of two ways. Sometimes it seems a little, maybe not desperate, but a little bit pandering, because they know James Gunn is not unaware of somebody like Alan Ritchson, because, they talk about who would they like to see as the character. The real question is, would Warner Brothers look at him, and is he enough of a name to be a Batman? I mean, Christian Bale had a great career. Michael Keaton had a great career before they were cast. Ben Affleck had a great career before they were cast. The problem with Alan Ritchson is he hasn't carried a movie.
Right.
He can carry a TV show, but can he carry a movie? And I think that's the question. But I think that, hey, putting it out there he's earned the right with Reacher seasons 1 and 2, especially with his physicality. Man, I make mention of it.
Yeah, and
if he hadn't done Reacher 1 and 2 and said this, I'd been like, come on.
It should be pointed out, too, that it's not like he's going around campaigning for the role. Like, he was specifically asked. He was doing an interview, and he was specifically asked, say, I'm Batman. Like, there's a lot of people talking about you should be Batman. He's like, oh, with all the rumors, they should practically hand it to me. So it's not like he's going out campaigning for it. But when asked the question, I mean, he's pretty definitive. I would love to do it. I mean, this would be great. So it's going to be really kind of interesting to see which direction they go with this. I still personally see him as He-Man. But
yeah, he'd be. That's
who says
good
you
too.
can't do both? Why can't he be
right.
Prince Adam and be Bruce Wayne? Why not? I could see it. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Alan Ritchson saying, hey, man, I would love to be James Gunn's Batman. Can you see it? Do you have other actors in mind? Like, if they announced it tomorrow, would you feel good about it? I hadn't thought about him really too much, but I'd be totally down to see him do it. I'll have a better idea once I see the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare to see how well he's able to do on the big screen there, but I don't think it's a bad choice. Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Ever since it was announced that my beloved, my co-partner of this bromance, my boy Henry Cavill, was no longer going to be Superman in the DC, as the DCEU was ending. They were restarting with a brand new DCU, and they decided they needed not a new actor to play Superman. They needed a new Superman. They wanted to just start fresh with a brand new Superman character, and thus, obviously, they needed a new actor. That's cool. I still get Henry and a lot of other things. But once they announced that Henry Cavill was no longer going to be our Superman, a lot of people started the whispers and the chanting, stuff like that. Well, now Marvel should sign him. Especially like Captain Britain is, to me, a little bit too on the nose. But I think Henry Cavill is a remarkable actor. I think the world of his acting ability ever since I saw him in The Tudors. Like, I thought, this guy is awesome. Then you see him in things like Man from U.N.C.L.E. I thought he was fantastic in that. I've just liked Henry in just about everything he's done. Well, there are now some reports going around. You may have seen some of the big websites and outlets are reporting that there are some stories going around that Henry Cavill has already indeed signed up to play a as of yet unnamed character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This comes to us from the folks over at Coming Soon, who wrote the following. According to Scooper My Time to Shine, Henry Cavill has supposedly joined the MCU by accepting a role offered to him. However, it is unknown what role it is. As of writing, My Time to Shine Hello has not revealed it. Take this scoop with a grain of salt, as it has not been directly from Marvel Studios or Kevin Feige. All right. Now, normally on my show, we don't talk about, random Twitter rumors, right? However, several of the outlets are running with this, and it does need to be pointed out that while not always right, the Twitter handle of My Time to Shine Hello has gotten several things right. Not all the time. And some of the things they predict are like spaghetti against the wall, like, say Henry Cavill signed up, and if he doesn't sign up for something in the next 5 years, My Time to Shine never said it would be within the next 5 years. I mean, so it could be a spaghetti against the wall sort of thing. Maybe, perhaps. But there have been times in My Time to Shine, this particular Twitter rumor leaker has been accurate. So it's something to at least take a look at and consider. Mm-hmm. Could Henry actually be joining the MCU? Well, you got to understand, he's an actor in Hollywood. The MCU has hundreds of actors that work with them. Why not Henry Cavill? In the world of superhero genres, forget the fact that Henry Cavill has played Superman. Henry has experience in the genre, period. He is a terrific actor. He's a great-looking dude. He's got the pure brute physical. We were just talking about Alan Ritchson. Henry Cavill gives Alan Ritchson. He's not quite the same level as Alan, but he can give Alan Ritchson a run for his money as far as pure physique that you bring to the big screen for a superhero look and appearance and stuff like that. So why not Henry? So let's, for just a moment, just for a second, let's assume for the sake of this discussion that the reports going around are true and that Henry Cavill has signed a deal to appear in an MCU film as an unknown character at this point, whoever that may be. All right, let's play the speculation game. Who's it going to be? The big one that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards is, obviously Captain Britain. I mean, that's the one that people, even before Henry Cavill parted ways with DC, a lot of people, he could be Superman in the DCEU and he could be Captain Britain in the Marvel universe. And actually, yeah, he could have been. There's nothing stopping him from doing that. So that's kind of been the big one. For me, I think it's a little bit too on the nose. I think it's just a little bit too on the nose. There's too many similarities. So I don't personally think it's going to be a Captain Britain. If anything, I think it might be a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of character. And what I mean by that is a character that has a real presence in the comics, but maybe nobody in the, movie-going audience really knows the character. Because, before Guardians came out, nobody had heard of Gamora. Nobody had heard of Drax. When I say nobody, I mean the average film goer and stuff like that. I have a feeling, Rob, and we have no idea that this is true or not, but for the sake of the discussion, if it's true, my guess it would probably be one of those, lesser known, but well-established comic book characters that hasn't appeared on the big screen before. As far, Rob, as whether or not I think this report is true, I have no reason to doubt it, and it very well could be true. It could be. I certainly don't think you're crazy if you think it's true. I think there's enough going for it that it could be true. I don't think it is right now. Like right now, to me, it seems like a spaghetti against the wall kind of thing. Like, just say it and years are going to pass before we ever find out if it's true. And if it's not, people will forget about it. But it could be true. So Rob, let me put those two questions to you. Number one, do you think there's validity to these whispers going around and that the headlines are running right now? And whether or not you believe it's true, assuming for the sake of the discussion that it is, who could you see him playing at this point?
Well, first of all, Henry Cavill has a physicality. Obviously, he played Superman, but it's not like we didn't have Chris Evans playing the Human Torch in Fox's Fantastic Four and then coming over and playing Captain America. So it's not unprecedented. And you and I have been going on and on and on about Henry Cavill's physicality and his presence and how much we like him. And he certainly looks like a lantern-jawed superhero. So it makes sense that they would actor gets role. I mean, Warner Brothers, he was going to play at one point Superman and he was going to play Napoleon Solo. And he did in Man from U.N.C.L.E. So, yeah, I think that it makes sense that there's not a lot of actors with that kind of, we're talking about Alan Ritchson, Henry Cavill is right on that list. So sure. But I can't help but feel like him being Captain Britain is kind of like, I don't know, it's so weird and on the nose to me. Like somebody just pulled that out of their ass that Henry Cavill might be a superhero in the MCU. So he can only play Captain Britain because he's from Britain. Okay.
And has been Superman.
Yeah. And it's been Superman. I'm like, why not Guardian from Alpha Flight? Or somebody like that. Make him give him your hometown, make him from Hamilton or whatever. Why not do something like that? I'm not saying that they should. I love Alpha Flight. I wouldn't mind bringing them into the MCU, but I whether he's going to be Captain Britain in what? They could certainly use a character like that for Secret Wars, but that's kind of out of left field, and if you bring in Captain Britain, do you bring his brother in who's Psylocke? Betsy Braddock. Are you going to go that direction or what are you going to do? So I haven't seen any indication in the MCU that there's going to even be a Captain Britain. So I think it's speculation. That's why it leads me to believe it's probably not true. But if it was, it'd be cool.
Now I'm going to say something that it pains me to say it. Okay. It pains me to say this, but one of the other things working against the Henry Cavill thing, and again, I'm acknowledging it. I'm not saying it ain't true. It could be, and I'll be excited if it is. But one of the reasons why I think works against it, Rob, and again, it pains me to say this. This isn't a situation of like getting Leonardo DiCaprio to join the MCU or getting a Denzel Washington to join the MCU.
Right.
Or even a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Because the reality is, as great, and I mean great, that Henry Cavill is, he has not proven to be a box office draw. For example, as they were starting to realize over at Warner Brothers that Black Adam wasn't tracking so hot, they made the last minute desperate effort that got me excited and a lot of you excited that, look, everybody, Henry Cavill as Superman is going to be appearing in it. Even if it was just a post-credit scene, right? They believed that that would generate some excitement to sell some more tickets and put some more butts in the seat. But that movie still failed. By the way, I happen to kind of like Black Adam, the movie. I don't think it was great, but I kind of enjoyed it. That being said, then just recently, they had this movie, while he was not the main star in it, all the marketing claimed that he was the main star, right? Like when you looked at all the Argyle commercials, it was Henry Cavill front and center. They kind of made it look like it was a Henry Cavill movie. That movie tanked. I mean, I think it's been in theaters for like 3 weeks, and worldwide, it has made like $77 million. So I love Henry Cavill. I am a major Henry Cavill fan, and I think he's fantastic. But it's not like, Rob, it's a no-brainer because people run out to see Henry Cavill in movies. They haven't. And even as Man of Steel, kind of like a lot of people will say, well, you know, Man of Steel made $600 and something million. Man of Steel made just as much, if not a little bit more money than as the first DCEU movie, as the first Iron Man did, as the first, MCU movies did. But I always try to explain to these folks who say that, because that's the wrong way of looking at it, that yeah, but when Marvel was starting out, they were literally recreating the new era of the genre.
Right.
By the time Man of Steel came out, Marvel had developed the genre that comic book movies were billion-dollar films. And that's an advantage that Superman had when Man of Steel had when it first came out. That Marvel had created an excitement around the genre. When Marvel started, comic book movies weren't making $1 billion. When Superman, Man of Steel came out, they were. And it still wasn't able to even crack $700 million. So again, do not take this as some anti-Henry Cavill thing. I love me Henry Cavill. But I don't know, Rob, what do you think about my kind of assertion here that, you know what the reality is? He's not a huge box office draw no matter how good he is. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with that. I mean, there is no denying that. I mean, I think he's a great performer, and I don't think he's ever quite got his due at the box office. But look, as a supporting character, you bring him in and then allow him to rise up in the ranks based on his abilities. I think that could be, I don't think they're going to make a movie with him headlining it. I think he'll come in and be a supporting character the way Paul Bettany was a supporting character as Vision.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, because that's a great way to do it. Bring him in. Look, he's one of us. They talk about women's uteruses exploding watching that video of him putting his gaming computer together. That guy is one of us, and people love him. So when you bring him in as a secondary character and make that character beloved the way Vision was immediately beloved in Age of Ultron, and then you can have him rise up the ranks. He earns his way through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know what? I think you're right. He comes in and he plays like, Brian Tyree, who was in Eternals, right? He's not the main headline guy, but he's there. I think you're right. Maybe he's that. Again, I don't even think the report is true that he's going to be in the MCU, but it's possible. And if he is, I think I agree with you, Rob. I think he'll be a secondary character that maybe, works his way forward from there, but we will have to see. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Do you believe the report that Henry Cavill has already agreed to appear in a future MCU film as a particular character that we don't know who it is yet? Or do you believe, nah, this is just fan wishing? I mean, there's nothing there. It's not legitimate. But if he is in it, who could you see him playing? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, we are going to move on and take your live questions that you guys have been firing into the Super Chats. Just so you know, if you're trying to send in Super Chats now, we've already turned them off. We already filled up all the Super Chats, so we've turned that off. But we're going to go over and take the questions for those of you who did send them in. But we are first going to say goodbye for today to writer, director, producer, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Rob, thanks a lot for being here. We'll see you in a couple days on Wednesday. And where can people follow you?
You can always follow me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, or find me on Instagram at RMBurnett or on X at BurnettRM.
All right, Rob, thanks a lot for being here. So, guys, we're going to get over to your questions now. But before we do, we're going to take another quick second and thank another sponsor of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends at Factor. We want to take a second and thank a sponsor of today's video, Factor. You know, guys, some days it's great to prepare your own meal, but some days it's great to have wonderful, delicious meals already ready to go. Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals makes eating better every day easy. Wherever tomorrow takes you, be ready with pre-prepared, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. You'll have over 35 different options a week to choose from, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and more. And there's even more to enjoy with over 55 nutrition-packed add-ons that help make your weekly meal planning even more delicious. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and have a feel-good week of meals ready to go. They've got snacks, smoothies, and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. And guys, you get to save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. So guys, head to factormeals.com/Campea50 and use the code Campea50 to get 50% off. That's code Campea50 at factormeals.com/Campea50 to get 50% off. And thank you to our friends at Factor for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that all down, let's get over and get to your live questions that you guys have been sending in, shall we? We're going to get things started off here with Dino Vader, who writes, one of two. I'm a little late, but here are my top 5 of 2023. Number 5, Elemental. I loved Elemental. I thought Elemental was fantastic. 4, Into the Spider-Verse, most eye candy. Number 3, Godzilla -1, most favorite monster. Number 2, John Wick 4, most unique action and most stylish. Now, number 1, Poor Things, most entertaining, most furious jumping. Yeah, listen, you know what's really funny heading into the Oscars now? There are still a lot of people who have not seen Poor Things. And it's a weird, you know what? It almost feels a bit like a Robert Eggers film. That's how the guy who directed, who's directing the upcoming Nosferatu, he directed The Witch, he directed The Lighthouse, he directed The Northman. But A24 kind of has that kind of feel to it of that. But anyway, Poor Things is great, and Emma Stone is definitely about to win her 2nd Academy Award. All right, next up, we got Damaris Love, who writes, and sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Damaris, for supporting us on that level, man. Damaris writes, with Henry supposedly being signed in, could there be a chance that he could play Pete Wisdom from Excalibur? That would be a random character that fits. Maybe, but Pete Wisdom, who was like a British, part of the British Secret Service and stuff like that, and he had like this, I think he was a mutant that had the ability to like fire energy knives from his fingers and stuff like that. While we've seen Marvel use lesser known characters before, that's a really deep dig to go down and getting a lesser. I'm going to guess no. I think that's just too, you know what? He would fit the role well. But I think that might be too obscure of a character so I'm going to guess no, Damaris, but if they did it, he would be a really good fit for it, actually, now that I think about it, because I could see him as James Bond, and Pete Wisdom is kind of like that in a win. So I don't know. Maybe. Again, I'm going to say I don't see it coming, but it would be a good fit. Anyway, Damaris, again, thank you for sending in a $20 super chat, man. Thank you so much for supporting our channel on that level. We appreciate it. All right, next up. Miguel Zayn writes, I think if Cavill has signed on for Marvel, he would be playing a character that's more unknown. I agree. Like Kit Harington playing Black Knight. Thoughts? You know what? That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I think so. like a lesser known to some non-hardcore comic book geeks, maybe even completely unknown, but not that deep of a dig into obscurity. I think the Kit Harington as Black Knight is a perfect example of the type of character that I could see them playing. So that's a really good comparison there, Miguel. That's who I could see him doing. All right. Matt Saunders writes, I saw Madam Web over the weekend. I'm sorry. And let's just say that I should have had 4 mini bottles of whiskey. 3 wasn't enough. Look, I have been talking, admittedly, like Madam Web is like the worst film ever created in humanity. And it's not. It's terrible. It's a car wreck. It's a bad, bad film. It's not the worst film of all time. Like, because I admit, if you've been listening to me talking about it, you'd be forgiven if you were walking away with the impression that it's like the worst possible movie ever made. It's not, but it's really bad. Like, it's really, really, really bad. And I'm sorry, Matt, that good folks like you and me had to waste our time sitting there. You know what? I'm actually considering going to see it again. And it's not because I hate myself, although that might be true. But I'm thinking about watching it again because I'm like, maybe I'll find more to appreciate if I saw it a second time. Maybe there's more. Maybe I missed some of the good stuff. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see. All right. Next up, we got La Ligue writes, considering the current situation of comic book movies and the critical and commercial reception of the Sonyverse, how long can they continue like this? I can't believe that Kraven and Venom 3 will be absolute successes. So what decision can they make for after 2024? Well, I still have more belief and faith in Venom 3 because, again, you've got Tom Hardy there kind of as the main force behind it, right? He's kind of the de facto executive producer of those films as well. And I have liked the other Venom films, so I'm okay with that. I still believe that can be a good film. I don't know that it will be, but I still have some belief in it. But Sony has got to turn things around. Kraven had better be good. I'm not saying great, but Kraven had better be good. If it's not, and I'm not trying to use hyperbole here, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but if Kraven is not even as bad as Madam Web, but bad, scrap it. Don't put it out. Because if Kraven is also a bad film, you are killing Venom 3. You're killing it. I mean, you may have already killed it with Morbius and Madam Web. You may have already killed Venom 3. But there is still hope for Venom 3. If Kraven is a bad film, you just got to pull the plug on it. Because look, let's be honest, at this point, Kraven isn't going to make any money, even if it's pretty good. So it's not going to make any money. If it's pretty good, still put it in theaters because that can help, rehabilitate the image. So that's fine. But if it's bad, not only is it already going to lose money, but now you're killing your future prospects as well. If it's bad, executives of Sony, listen to me, do the David Zaslav and kill the film and don't release it because you're only going to damage other things that you have coming from it. So, hey, I might be wrong. But that's just kind of the way I see it at this point. Let's see. Matan writes, do you think that Madam Web is what will push Tom Rothman out of Sony? No, one film will never do that. While he did good stuff like Searchlight, he has had too heated of a record with blockbusters in his time in both Sony and Fox. Nah, Madam Web is certainly not going to be it. And they've had some big successes. Look, that's the thing. Everybody, when people are mad, right? And this is true not just in movies. When we're mad at certain individuals or we're mad at our job or when we're mad, when we as people are mad, we tend to only see, remember, and think about the negatives, right? When you get into a fight with your significant other, for the first hour, the only stuff that goes through your head is all the terrible things about her or him, right? That's the only stuff that goes through your head, is the bad thing. You don't think in that first hour about all the great things about your relationship. When you had a terrible day at your job, all you think about for that first hour is how much your job sucks. You don't think about how, or you don't remember in that moment how grateful you were when you got that job. You don't think about the things you appreciate about your job, right? And we as film fans are the same way. When Marvel puts out Morbius and Madam Web, all we think about is Sony sucks. But the reality is they've done some great things, even under Rothman, right? They've done some great things, even just with the Spider-Verse, but outside of the Spider-Verse as well. So I don't think Madam Web's going to do it, but they have to fix it. You can't just keep going with this, or else it could become very, very problematic. All right. Next up, we got Dr. Stinky, who writes, I watched 2 movies over the weekend. Mr. Brooks. Oh, I really like Mr. Brooks very much. And Beast. And Mr. Brooks was kind of mad. Oh, that's too bad. I loved Mr. Brooks. But Beast was great. Mr. Brooks 4 out of 10. Beast 7 out of 10. I got to disagree with you. I mean, I respect that movies hit us all in different ways. If we're talking about the Kevin Costner film, Mr. Brooks, I really liked that movie. I actually think it was one of Kevin Costner's, not the best, but I honestly think it was one of Kevin Costner's best performances. Who's the comedian, guys, who everybody says looks like Harloff? Ray, he's the one in your comedy, the comedy that you like, the store, the guy who works in the store. What's it called? Dane Cook. Thank you. I mean, Dane Cook was also in it. Oh, everybody in the live chat remembered who it was too. Yeah, it was Dane Cook. So Dane Cook aside, I thought Mr. Brooks was a really super underrated film. Hey, listen, clearly it didn't work for you, and that's cool, but I'm glad you at least saw it. Even if you didn't love it, I'm glad you at least saw it, because I think that's an underappreciated movie. I really do. All right, let's keep things going. Thanks for that, Dr. Snicky. Next up, we got Miguel, who writes, over or under 30%. The first X-Men film will sideline Wolverine, 0%. And focus more on Cyclops and Storm and some of the OG team. Nope. I hope they would, obviously with a good story. I need Sinister as well somewhere in there. Yeah, Sinister, Nathaniel Essex is not somebody that you have to have Mr. Sinister in the first film. But you got to have him in this X-Men universe. I mean, that's the one thing the other X-Men stuff didn't do well, which I really thought Sinister is one of their most awesome villains. Sinister is great, but there is no chance you sideline Wolverine as you're starting your X-Men universe. Wolverine is by far the most popular character in the X-Men, right? You say X-Men, you think Wolverine. Now, one of the things they've got to do is have Cyclops. And as much as I love the Fox X-Men movies, at least most of them, obviously some of them stunk, but even in the best X-Men films, the one thing Fox really always messed up was how they did Cyclops. Despite the fact that they had a great actor in James Marsden playing him, they totally snafooed how they used Cyclops. Cyclops needs to be the leader of the X-Men. He needs to be strong, he needs to be your Captain America, right? So they need to do that. But if you're running Marvel would be idiots not to lead out with Wolverine. He is the most popular character. You have to come out with that. Don't make him the sole focus of the X-Men, but you've got to have him in there. So while I don't know what Kevin Feige's going to do, I cannot believe for a moment that they won't have Wolverine as a part of that first X-Men. He's the most popular character in the universe. You got to lead with that. 100%. But don't put all the focus on him. Heavy emphasis on Cyclops. Heavy emphasis on Jean. If you're going to, it'd be interesting to see if they even kind of use some of the original ones. Are you going to have an Iceman in that first one or not? By the way, they've made Iceman psychotically powerful in the comics. They made Iceman from a really cool character. No pun intended. Get it? Iceman, cool. Anyway, you're welcome. They made him in the comics. I don't know if any of you follow it, but they ultimately made him ridiculously powerful. Like, he's what they call in the comics an Omega level mutant, like the most powerful of the most powerful. So, but I think if they do Iceman, they'll scale that down a little bit. But yeah, absolutely have to have Wolverine in there. I think 100% that he'll be there. All right. Next up, Sam Fisher writes, I agree, Rob, give Garfield his Amazing Spider-Man 3, but I would adapt Loeb and Sale's Spider-Man Blue, not Hickman's USM, and get back Shailene Woodley as MJ Watson. Nah. Nope. Listen, they pulled the plug on the Amazing Spider-Man 3 for a reason. And I'm saying this as somebody who Andrew Garfield is my favorite Spider-Man. I love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I love Tom Hardy as Spider-Man. But Andrew Garfield is my favorite. He's my favorite. But even though he's my favorite, the reason they pulled the plug on the Amazing Spider-Man series is because it was doing this. And they didn't believe, and the fans didn't believe that they would be, the fans didn't believe a third one would do all that well. Now, I'm not saying there's not an avenue to have Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man again, but I don't think you can do Amazing Spider-Man 3. I just don't think that's the right way to go. I think it would cause some confusion. They pulled the plug on that franchise for a reason. Even though I still think you can have Andrew Garfield back in some way, shape, or form, I just don't think doing Amazing Spider-Man 3 is the one to do it. But that's just me. Who knows? We'll see what happens. All right, thanks for that, Sam. Next up, John Redcorn writes, Nick Cage is returning for Spider-Man Noir show. Yeah, heard about that. That is great. That is one of the great things about Into the Spider-Verse is Spider-Man Noir. Listen, you could have done it without Nicolas Cage. You could have. And it would have been okay. It would have been fine. Not having Nicolas Cage would not have sunk it or anything like that. But I did like hearing the news that he's coming back. All right. Pardon me. Next up. Leonardo writes, hey crew, cheers from Mexico. Hello. Jose Yaspic, who was amazing in Narcos as Amando Carrillo, played the Peruvian elder. Oh, is that who it was in Madam Web? What a shame. Yeah, as the guy in the jungle. I promised your mother I would be here for you. Oh man, it's too bad because I forgot that the guy who plays the main villain is from The Manchurian, right? And he was great in that. And I'm sure it was not his fault, but it was the worst performance I've ever seen in a comic book movie. Now remember, a performance is the child of three parents. Right? A performance is never just the actor. The performance is a child of three parents: the actor, the director, and the screenplay. Those three things, the actor, the director, and the screenplay, those are the three elements, three creative sperm squirts, if you will, that go into making a performance. Because the actor's got to have the right dialogue to say. The actor has to be under the guidance of the right director guiding the performance. And then that actor has got to then bring all that together and bring it out. And and so therefore, sometimes you get a terrible performance that isn't necessarily the actor's fault. So whether that's the case here or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, there were many casualties there, Leonardo. Many, many, many casualties. All right. Next up, Christopher Brickner writes, imagine if Henry Cavill is Marvel's Sentry. I don't see it, honestly. I don't see it because I don't see it all Henry. When you look at Henry's physical presence, right? That is not the strung out junkie that, this weak, frail, strung out junkie that then transforms into the Sentry, right? And so I don't see it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like, there's a lot of people I've seen in the live chat saying Hyperion. Hyperion makes a little bit more choice, but even then, even that character's a little bit too on the nose. Like, you don't just get the guy who played Superman to kind of be a Superman in the MCU as well. I'd be more interested in something else a little bit, I think. But, whatever. That's just me. All right, next up. Thanks for that, Christopher. We've got Belky, who writes, True Detective was one of the most surprising and satisfying endings I've seen in a show in a long time. Now my favorite season after season 1. You know what? It is also my favorite season since season 1. I really enjoyed True Detective Dark Country. That's what it's called, right? Dark Country? I think so. But I will say this. I didn't love the finale. Night Country, not Dark Country. Thank you, Haunted Autumn. It was the first one to remind me. It was Night Country, not Dark Country. Thank you. It wasn't... I loved the season overall, and they did the most important thing, which was the solving of the mystery was satisfying. Like, I thought the answer to the two mysteries, who killed the girl, what happened to all those scientists, those are the two mysteries. And I thought that the conclusion and the answer to those mysteries was quite satisfying. It worked for me narratively, and it made sense. It was consistent with the rest of the show. But I thought everything else around them actually solving the mystery in the finale was a little weaker to me, to be honest with you. So the conclusion of the mysteries, very good. I liked it. But everything else around it felt weird. So I loved the season overall, but I thought the finale could have been a little bit better, even though I liked the way the mysteries were ultimately solved. All right. Jared writes, John, I am sorry for not listening to you. I saw Madam Web. It makes X-Men Origins, which also sucks, look like Casablanca. Take me to U2 with you. Yeah. But you know what? There are some movies that are really bad, but you just got to see for yourself. You know what? I don't make myself see every movie. There are 2 or 3 movies every month that in a normal time when we've got like 6, 7, 8 movies coming out every month, there are 2 or 3 every month that I don't see. Like I have just given myself permission at this point in my career that I don't have to see every single movie. Madam Web is one of those movies that I really could have taken a pass on, but the fact that it's a part of the Madam Web thing is a part of a much bigger story, the Sony Spider-Verse, right? And so even though I heard it was really bad, I just decided that I'm just going to see it anyway. I got to see for myself. I mean, Sony told us they had no belief in the film by not even making a second trailer, holding the review embargo to the day before. So Sony was going, hey, everybody, we think our own movie sucks. So if you don't believe in your movie, why should I? And then I heard the early reactions, the first reviews that came out were really not good and all that kind of stuff. But I just had to see it for myself. And then you guys just had to see, even though I knew it was going to be a train wreck, I just had to see it for myself. And apparently you did too, Jared. All right, next up. Sin Vendetta writes and sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Sin Vendetta, for supporting us on that level. Writes, well, John, due to probably you meant sheer curiosity, I went to see Madam Web, and with no surprise, it was pretty terrible. But luckily, I did a double feature. Also saw Lisa Frankenstein, which was a much better film. Lisa Frankenstein is one of those movies that I decided to take a pass on. I didn't think the trailers looked at all interesting, to be honest with you, even though it's got that girl from Supernatural, and I really like her. But I've been hearing good things lately. And actually, Jonathan Voico, he and I were just talking before the show. I think he's going to go see that tonight. So I'm hearing really decent things about it. I might have to run out and check it out myself. And apparently you saw it and you liked it as well. So yeah, good. So I think I'm going to have to, again, this weekend's a write-off for me. Thursday, I got the Leafs game. Friday, I got the U2 concert. Saturday is Bad Bunny. And then Sunday is Dune Part 2, I'm seeing this Sunday. So it's probably going to have to wait till Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. But I think I'm going to go see it now. Enough of you guys have told me that you've liked it, that I'm going to go, okay, you've won me over. I'm going to go see it. You know what? No, I'm going to base it on what Jonathan Voico says. So I've heard a bunch of you guys say it's really good. Jonathan's going to go to see it. I'm going to wait to hear what his verdict is, and then I'll go see it. All right. Thanks for that, Sin Vendetta, and thank you for supporting us on that level, man. We really appreciate it. All right, next up. Matt Mobile writes, I feel like if they would have had more of Sydney Sweeney in her spider suit throughout the movie, it would have made a big difference. No, it wouldn't have. Would have made zero difference. It wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever, because it still would have been a crappy movie with crappy dialogue, crappy direction, crappy writing. I often talk about this. Everybody says they love the Fantastic Four. If you count the Corman one, they made 4 Fantastic Four movies with arguably the greatest villain, or at least one of the greatest villains in comic book history, Doctor Doom. They had that plenty of Doctor Doom in those movies. Plenty of Doctor Doom. Did that make the movies any better? Nope. Didn't make them one bit better. It doesn't matter if you do that if you still make a crappy movie. Then people say if they had cast this person, it would have been better. No, it wouldn't have, because they just would have casted a great actor in a terrible movie and it still would have been terrible. Oh, they should have made this storyline from the comics. Wouldn't have made any difference if they still hired the same crappy screenwriters, that they would have turned it into something bad. Right? And to the point of this movie specifically, showing more of Sydney Sweeney in her spider suit wouldn't have made sense for the movie. It wouldn't have made sense for it, because the movie takes place in 2003, before they become these spider people. So it wouldn't have been consistent with the movie. I mean, maybe it would have given guys more eye candy to look at. And Sydney Sweeney is obviously stunningly beautiful, but I mean, all the women in this movie are stunningly beautiful. I mean, but if you're just going to make a crappy movie around it, it won't make a difference. All right. Raymond Verrata writes, if Marvel does cast Henry, I hope it's some substantial Marvel hero or villain, not just some non-masked government agent or rich guy like Robert Redford, Martin Freeman, or Julia Dreyfus. Why not? Listen, your number one priority is making a great movie, right? And if you've got a character that you think a particular actor fits great with and can really elevate the material and contribute to making an overall better movie, then do that. Do that. Don't just go for the gimmick thing and saying, well, it's got to be a famous character. Why? Why? Like, if this actor, and remember, this is a lot of ifs. I'm talking totally theoretically here, Raymond. But I mean, if you have a character that is a lesser known or a human character, like a non-super or something like that, because who denies that Robert Redford didn't elevate that movie? Robert Redford elevated Winter Soldier. Yeah, he didn't play a super famous Marvel character or a super famous, super powered Marvel character, but Robert Redford elevated the shit out of that movie, because they had him in the right role that he specifically could come in and make even better. So why not do that with a Henry Cavill? Again, that's if you've got a character that does it. If you've got a super powered superhero, prominent Marvel character that you think Henry will do that for, sure, absolutely go do that. But I would encourage you, Raymond, as my fellow film fan, that don't write off the idea of him playing a more human level character. If he can step in and elevate it the way Robert Redford did in Winter Soldier, why not? Go for it. I'm not saying that's what they have to do. I'm saying don't disqualify that in your mind just yet, because it could be the best thing they could possibly do. Maybe. All right. Thanks a lot for writing that in, Raymond. Always appreciate your contributions. All right. James Germain writes, so J-Lo album / movie sounds like the reviews are good. I'm hesitant. Listen, I don't think J-Lo is a great actress, but she can be quite serviceable. I have found her to be. She's given some performances. Like, what was the guys in the live chat? What was that name of the movie that she just did a couple years ago where she was the stripper? I can't, and it's got the girl from Crazy Rich Asians in it, and I'm freezing on the name of the movie. Hustlers. Thank you. B for B-Y Driver. Baby Driver was the first one to say Hustlers, right? That's a really good movie. And while I don't think it was Oscar level or anything, I thought J-Lo was very solid in it. I thought she was very solid. And she can turn in solid. I don't think she's one of the great actresses working, but she can be quite solid. And if I'm a producer, I have no problem with her being in my movie. So yeah, I mean, she's put out some crappy movies, but so has everybody. I mean, even my boy, good Canadian kid, Ryan Reynolds, put out Red Notice and Six Underground. But he's awesome. Ryan's awesome. He's the best movie star in the world right now, in my opinion. But yeah, so I have no reason to doubt, James, that the new J-Lo movie could be good. I'm not saying it is, but I have no reason to doubt that it could be. All right. My Comic Planet writes, have you guys watched that new reality show called The Traders? Oh, it's been blowing up on social media. That's the one with the guy who played Nightcrawler, right? What's his name? Something Cummings. Alan Cummings? Is that his name? Is that the one? Is The Traders? Is that the one that Alan Cummings is the host of? Help me out in the live chat if it is. Yeah, a guy, you guys in the live chat saying that's the one. You know what? I haven't seen a single frame of this show, but I'm seeing it advertised all over the place. So I might have to check it out myself. Again, I haven't seen it. I don't even know what it's about, but I'm seeing it advertised all over the place. And I'm hearing a couple people saying this is a sleeper hit, this show. So I don't know. I might have to go check it out. Thanks for putting it up on the radar, My Comic Planet. All right. Next up, Dangerous Lee writes, Fantastic Four, Captain America 4, Superman Legacy, Blade, all coming next year. 2025 is going to absolutely be lit. Maybe. I got all the belief in Deadpool. I mean, clearly I got all the belief in the world in Deadpool and other things. What's the other thing coming out in 2024? Anyway, so 2024 is looking good to me. 2025. Listen, the reason why I have a lot of faith in Fantastic Four is because they've got a proven really good director. They've got solid writers, and they've just announced what I believe to be a very, very good cast. Captain America 4. I have renewed enthusiasm because since Bob Iger gave Kevin Feige his power back that Bob Chapek stripped away from him, one of the first things Kevin Feige did is like, all right, this movie is not going well enough. We need to scrap a bunch of it. Let's go back to the drawing board and do extensive reshoots and make sure we put out something that's really good. Same thing he's doing with Daredevil Born Again. So that's renewed a lot of my enthusiasm for Captain America 4. And Superman Legacy has a guy that I have liked every single movie he's ever done, and that's James Gunn. I mean, James Gunn is a phenomenal director who's put out great stuff in both DC and Marvel. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is one of the best comic book movies we've had in years. So I have all the reason to believe. And Blade, who knows? I don't know what to make of Blade. Blade got announced like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right, next up. Let's see here. Anthony C. writes, your ancestors called it magic. You call it science. Well, where I come from a place where they are one and the same, a simple line, yet one of the best. From the first Thor movie, it was such, it's amazing how quick moments can really define things. I talked the other day in X-Men 2, when you've got Pyro going to Bobby's house, there's no dialogue, not a single line of dialogue, but you just see Pyro seeing the picture of Bobby with his happy family. And then a quick cut back to Pyro's face, and the look on Pyro's face told you everything about Pyro's background that you needed, and there wasn't a single line of dialogue. That line in the first Thor movie, but by the way, I think the first Thor movie is the second most underrated comic book film ever made. Man of Steel is the most underrated comic book film of all time. I think the first Thor movie is the second most underrated. But that one line, like that line itself kind of solved like a big question about how are they going to, define the magic and this and that. And then he says, your ancestors called it magic. Now you call it science. Where I come from, it's kind of one and the same. You know what's weird? Can I tell you something that's a little bit weird about me? I don't know why. One thing weird about you? Yes, I'm going to tell you one thing. This goes through my head all the time, and I have no idea why. But sometimes I'll be driving in my car. I know this is so strange, and I'm going to tell you about it. I'll be driving in my car, and I'll think to myself, wouldn't it be wild if I was able to instantly go back in time to Rome in the age of the Caesars and show up and say, yo, Caesar, you want to ride? And like drive him at 70 miles per hour, which would make his brain explode. And I remember, and I often think, how would I explain this to Caesar? How would I explain this? And how would I even explain science to Caesar? And I go through this process. I don't know why I do this exercise, but I go through in my head, how would I go back in time, thousands of years, and explain this technology to Caesar? And sometimes I think about things that they would consider like technological advancements they have at the time. And I think about how I would say, well, you know how when you take a certain amount of heat and it creates fire, that's not magic. It's just that you have figured out, we have as a human race have figured out how to do that. A catapult throwing a stone farther than any man could throw it. That's not magic. That's just something you figured out while expanding your understanding of our natural world, that you've been able to make that happen. It's not magic. It's the science of your time. And I would say to Caesar in this dream scenario I have, well, as the years have gone on, we've learned more and then learned more and then learned more. And now we're able to do things that you may think is magic, just the way that you can do things now that maybe people 500 years ago wouldn't have been able to know how to do too. I don't know why I go through this exercise in my head, but it does. Almost every time I'm in my car, I think about, what if I could take Caesar for a ride in my car? How would I explain to Caesar? To your ancestors, it was magic. Today you call it science. I come from a place where they're one and the same. It's a great line in that Thor movie. Great, great line. All right. Next up, we've got Future Millionaire, who writes, currently rewatching Dune in preparation of part 2 and enjoying my day off. Cheers, guys. Listen, Ann and I went to go see Dune in the theaters again the other day. That movie, that's one of those movies like Man of Steel and Age of Ultron that for me, that just keeps, I don't think Age of Ultron is a top 5 best MCU movie, but I remember like me and Schnepp when he was still alive, me, Schnepp, and Rob, we all agree that every time we would watch Age of Ultron, it got better and better. Like every time I see Age of Ultron, it's like, that was better than I remember it. And Dune, even though I already thought it was magnificent, Dune gets better every time I watch it. I mean, that movie is so freaking good. I cannot wait for Dune Part 2, man. I cannot wait. All right, next up, and final question of the day comes to us from My Comic Planet, who writes, I love Chris S. I have no idea who Chris S. is, but I don't agree with his stance regarding Madam Web. His YouTube is a review page, so he can't be afraid to judge a film harshly if it's warranted. He's been getting a lot of backlash. Or you're talking about guys, please don't just use initials. I'm going to assume you're talking about Stuckman. But listen, Chris is a guy who gives his opinion. Just because you don't agree with his opinion, don't listen. I think the two best pure film critics, because I'm not really a film critic. I'm a pundit, right? I talk about movie news. I talk about developments. I'm not really a pure film reviewer. I mean, I review movies, but that's not really what I am. I'm not a film critic per se. There are guys who are. And I think the two best at doing it, and they're the polar opposites of each other. I think the two best guys at doing it on YouTube are Jeremy Johns and Chris Stuckman. I think they're the two best at it. Now they approach film criticism completely the opposite, right? When it comes to pure analysis, Stuckman is the best. I mean, he blows Jeremy out of the water at it. He blows everybody out of the water. I mean, at just pure analysis from that point of view. Jeremy is great at expressing the experience of watching those movies and stuff like that, way better than anybody else. So they're like two polar opposite guys of reviewing, and I think they're both magnificent at it. Now, they're both going to do reviews. The film is still subjective, regardless whether you're going analysis or experiential. It's still just subjective. So I don't give two shits if Chris Stuckman's been getting a lot of backlash. Fuck anybody giving him backlash. I mean, normally people who give backlash against critics is just because you don't have the same opinion as me. Boo-hoo. I mean, I personally don't watch film critics based on whether or read. I read more film critics than I watch, but I don't choose who I read or watch as film critics based on whether or not they say the same thing that I already think. No, I think some of my favorite film critics are one who have completely different opinions than mine, but I really enjoy the way they break it down. I don't go to a film critic to find somebody who just has my same opinions. I go to film critics when I think they're really good at breaking down why they think the way they think, whether that's from an experiential way, like Jeremy does, or an analysis way, like a Stuckman does. I don't need to agree with their opinion. I just want to hear, what's your opinion? And then hear how they break that down. And both of them are so good at doing that. Now listen, Chris Stuckman is also in a very interesting position that he is both a film critic and trying to be a filmmaker. He's got a movie coming out, right? And I've made movies, but it's simply really for the experience of making them. I've never seen myself as being a professional filmmaker. I've made films, but I don't consider myself a filmmaker. My experience in making films has really been more as an exercise so I can appreciate more the people that do it, right? I don't know if you can be a director and be a film critic at the same time. And I think Chris is really Chris is in really uncharted territory right now. And I think Chris is just trying to figure his way. Like, how do I be a filmmaker at the same time that I have a YouTube channel that is about film criticism? Like, how do I be a filmmaker myself and stand here and try to pass judgment on other filmmakers at the same time? And nobody has ever really struck that balance. And Chris is in a position right now that not a lot of people have ever been in, that he's trying to find that balance. Where does that work? But never think it's because just because he gives his opinion and it doesn't line up with what your opinion is or somebody else's opinion is, that doesn't mean it's not his honest opinion. People make wild assumptions without knowing shit. And I have never had any reason to believe, even when I have most vehemently disagreed with Stuckman, I have never been given reason to believe that he isn't, whether it's close or way far off of my opinion, that he isn't just giving his honest thoughts. And if it's not as critical, like if he's not, and by the way, I should say, I haven't seen Chris's review of Madam Web, but just because he may not think Madam Web is as bad as I think it is, that's not any reason to doubt he isn't just giving his honest opinion. Maybe he doesn't think it's that bad. Maybe he thinks it's bad, but not that bad. That doesn't mean he's not being honest. Anyway, I'm just saying, I don't take the whole issue of people backlashing against a critic very seriously, because 9 times out of 10, not 10 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, when I hear about a person or certain people being mad at any particular film critic, what that really is you thought something different than I did. And maybe that's the case here. Maybe that's not the case here. I don't know. But I tend to not really care whether people like or dislike film critics, right? I don't normally care about that stuff. All I do know is that Chris Stuckman is very good at what he does. Has always been very good at what he does. Even when I have very much disagreed with him, he's really good. Just like Jeremy is very, very good at what he does, even though I'll oftentimes not agree with Jeremy, but that's not important. What's important is Jeremy is great and Chris is great at taking their own personal subjective experiences with a movie and then breaking down what led them to feel that way. That doesn't mean I have to feel that way. Doesn't mean you have to feel that way. But there's too often times that like some film fans feel like, well, if a critic isn't saying what I think, then I don't think they're a very good critic. Then you're completely missing the point, you know? So that's why Comic Planet, you know that about me because you've been around the channel for a long time, right? So you know that's how I feel about it. But that's why I don't really care. I don't care. Like whatever his stance on, I don't even know what his stance on Madam Web is, but I don't care. You don't have to agree with his stance on Madam Web. And if he's decided he does or doesn't want to see it, who cares? There's 2 or 3 movies every month that I don't go see. So who cares? It is what it is. Anyway, guys, thanks for sharing your thoughts on my comic plan. I appreciate it, man. That'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show a part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in those questions. Number 1, because you gave us thought-provoking, interesting things to talk about. And number 2, you supported this channel as you did it, and all of us involved with the show. Thank you guys so very much. I want to thank, of course, Robert Meyer Burnett, who is here. I want to thank the 2 guys sitting on the other side of that door, Jonathan and Raymond, for helping me put this show together. Thank you to all of you guys. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'll look forward to seeing you. So until then, my friends, my name's John Campea. Bye-bye.